Okay, have here a 1996 Jeep XJ Cherokee, and the problem it's got is a bad crank position sensor, a very, very common problem. It manifests differently on certain different vehicles. Sometimes they just stop altogether, sometimes they just run a little bit rough. Mine's a little different. It's on and off, it's intermittent. It'll usually start up, but you'll hear it running really roachy. And you notice I got a lot of static whenever it's failing on the radio, which tells me it's something electronic. But it also will cut out and buck and jump really badly, which led me to think it was probably the CPS, and I'll show you why I know it is for sure. Okay, I'm going to read codes on this reader, which is multifaceted, and you can see it's got a P1391 pending. There's no check engine light on the dash. It has to go bad for a certain amount of time before it does show up as a check engine light, but clearly I've lost my crank signal, so the crank position sensor is the culprit. You can hear it running a little bit roachy right now too. Okay, on this model, the crank position sensor, the plug is up here, runs on the back of the intake manifold, and then down toward the bell housing, you can see it's actually bolted onto the back of the bell housing. You can see, because I've got a flashlight jammed in here, you can see the crank position sensor down there, and you can see it's got two bolts facing backwards that are interesting to get to. Now normally what you do is you crawl up under the car and you use a long set of extensions and reach them from underneath. I'm going to try to take them off from the front using a special wrench and save a lot of time. And this is the wrench I was talking about, commonly available for all the usual suspects, probably $6 to $10 delivered. Should save a lot of time. Okay, it's got a swivel head that's stiff enough to stay where you put it, and a very easy ratchet mechanism, so it turns easily, and importantly, a 12-point socket mechanism so that it is a little easier to place, and with any luck this will slide right over those bolts and turn them from on top without having to mess around climbing under the car or assembling a 3-foot long series of extensions. Okay, I decided to use an NGK, also known as NTK, part, which is a high quality part, although even so it's going to cost about half what an OEM unit will. The sensor that's in the car now was replaced in the middle of a road trip with what was available at the local car parts store. It did last about 50,000 miles, but this is something you don't want to redo, so I'd suggest buying a good one instead of getting one of the cheap ones, because you don't want to do this over and over. Okay, I disconnected this hose just to keep it out of the way. It's been broken once long ago. Also, I recommend taking off the hold down for the cable to get it out of your way, and so you can move the cable out of the way to work on the second bolt on the sensor. Okay, with that out of the way, you pop the little tab and pull the connector apart, and you've now got the wiring harness out of your way. Okay, I wedged my flashlight in to supply some light on the subject. You can see the cable running down to the sensor down there. So that should give me the light I need to work on it and to film it, even more importantly. Okay, I've got the light positioned down there. It's a magnetic light. Lighting up the area, you can see the sensor there, and got the wrench set up for removal, the little bend in it, and the trick is to work your hand down, which is really hard to see, but I'm placing the wrench on the bolt. Okay, it's on there now. And turning it. By far the hardest part of this is filming it, so I just dropped my wrench. Okay, since this one's lifted a bit, it's a little easier to use a step stool to get up into this next phase. Okay, got the wrench back on it, and I'm just holding it in my palm, turning it, holding it in place with my index finger as I rotate it off. The bolt was a little insistent on staying in there, and here's where you want to make sure that there's not a gigantic hole underneath the bolt that it can fall into. Some models have a hole there, others have a cover. You don't want to lose a bolt down there, because then you got to go fish it out of the bell housing. It's a big hassle. So in this case, I've got it out, and relatively easy. Okay, so there it is, and just one to go, and it's the one up on top, which really won't be any harder to get to, although it'll probably be harder to film. Need to move the cable out of the way, okay, to get, just so it doesn't get in your way of the bolt. So the second bolt is right there, and my finger's pointing where, of course, nobody can see because it's invisible. Okay, the second bolt is right there. I can't tell you how awkward filming this is, but it's actually not that hard to get to with the wrench. It's just going to be really hard to film it reliably, so I'll do my best. Okay, truth be told, I did need two hands to break it loose, which really wasn't a big deal. Easy enough to do, but made it impossible to film it by myself. But essentially, once you get it started, it should come right out. It's probably loose enough at this point to remove it by hand, so I will attempt to do that. Put the wrench right there. Yep, coming right out. Okay, the second bolt is now out, and should just be a matter of grabbing the cable from the sensor and pulling it out of the bell housing. Okay, you're going to want to transfer over this little clip onto the new unit, but just make sure everything looks the same, that the form factors are identical. Anytime you're doing any job, really, make sure the connectors match up, and you're good to go. Okay, the next trick is to get the bolt started, and it's going to be a little bit of a feel thing. This is where having done this a lot of times will come in handy, but you just have to wiggle the bolt around gently, hopefully without dropping it, to look for the hole. Okay, got it in there. Okay, once it's started, spin it in by hand as far as you can, just to save having to use the ratchet too much. And ideally, before it's fully seated, we'll put in the other side, just so that there's as much freedom of movement as possible to get the bolt started. But it's almost fully in. Grab the other bolt. The sharp-eyed among you will see the little cuts and scrapes I'm developing as I do this. Okay. Okay, and just a matter of sliding it in to the hole, finding it by feel, and spinning it down by finger until you're close to tight, and then finishing up with a ratchet. Placing the ratchet over the first bolt and turning it. It's actually much easier to do one-handed than taking it out, but get it good and snug. It doesn't have to be gorilla tight. It's just a sensor. It's nothing mechanical. And then swing back and do the other side. May help to hold it on by your fingertip. Hold it in position. Okay. Okay, now all that remains is to fish the cable up. Replug the connector. Make sure the little notch here is up so that it grabs the little tab there. Push until it seats. Okay, and then we put it back on the strain relief, add the nut, and we're done. Okay, snug it down, and you've completed the job without crawling under the car. Well, except to retrieve the wrench I dropped. So, hope that helped you. Good luck with your fix. And don't forget to reconnect the vacuum line.